Hello Michael, this is Russell Brand. I'm here with your sister Alex. Thank you very much for putting me in your documentary. My understanding is it's about life and philosophy. And well done on everything, Michael. Well done for investigating life. Well done for not accepting what you're told, but trying to find new truths for yourself. Krishnamurti, the great philosopher, said truth is a pathless land, that each of us has to find our own truth. But myths and stories can guide us.
Here in the UK, all around us we see a stark contrast in living conditions. Some people seem to have it all, whereas some are in a constant struggle. What's causing this? What are the attitudes we have towards it? And what's being done to address this issue?
I don't have the exact figures, but I know that usage of food banks has gone up.
The situation with the food banks, they are reducing, fortunately.
Could you live on a 0 hours contract?
No, some people choose a 0 hours contract.
I'm saying there are 700,000 people on 0 hours contracts. Could you live on one?
No, as I said,
Could
some
you live
people.
on one?
Well, I want to create a country where.
I think the government's opted out completely in this country. They've opted out in every way. They're saying there's nobody paying taxes.
Could you live on a 0 hours contract?
Well, look, that's not the question. The question is...
Well, it's the question I'm asking.
Well, yeah, look, but the point is there's exclusive 0 hours contracts. So no, I couldn't live on one of those.
Yeah, it's people fighting against each other, really. And also it gives no kind of security to people. Obviously for students and stuff it's really good, a 0 hour contract, you do everything pro bono. But that's not something that will actually help develop our economy, and I think it will just, as a society, destroy it, really.
You completely sold out your principles and you've lied to your voters. How could you do that?
I won't apologise for, nonetheless, in those very difficult circumstances, producing a system for the future of universities.
Yeah, so I think the money's not... There's other ways to generate capital. It shouldn't be taken off kind of people with no money to start with and just rack up a debt. That's...
How do you feel about your £50,000 maintenance loan that could end up costing you £166,150 if your starting salary is at £26,000?
I don't actually know how I feel about it at the moment because, once again, it's well hidden. It's not an immediate debt, and it's basically another way of forcing us to get indebted. And I only found out that our debt could be tripled, so from 50,000 to 160 quite recently, and that's pretty scary too. I didn't anticipate that. I won't be making that sort of money.
It's not the work of hooligans, but instead of university students.
Student fees were originally free in the UK. However, they have taken a steep hike upwards since 1998, when the Labour government first changed legislation. The initial sum was £1,000. However, this is drastically increased in 2004 to £3,000. This was highly controversial at the time amongst both students and politicians, because in their 2001 manifesto, Labour clearly stated an increase in tuition fees would not be implemented. This is a clear example of politicians promising one thing in order to gain popularity, then abandoning commitments made. In 2010, the coalition government voted for raising fees cap to £9,000. This demonstrates how gradual policy changes over time amount to significantly different living conditions.
But we shouldn't have made a promise we weren't absolutely sure we could deliver. There's no easy way to say this. We made a pledge, we didn't stick to it, and for that I am sorry.
And you see students give up 3 years of work, where they might be earning money, perhaps on skilled wages, they go, and then they end up with a debt of £12,500 under the present system. They marry another student, which I did, that's £25,000, then you take out a mortgage, you start life with a debt of £70,000, and every employer would love to employ someone with a debt of £70,000 because they won't cause any trouble.
I believe that we have to sort out the homeless. We have to give them homes and addresses, because at the moment we have this bizarre equation that if you're homeless, you can't get benefits, and if you can't get benefits, you can't get a home.
Very uphill. It's an uphill struggle when you're homeless. You don't have nobody to help you out. You stink. You don't wash. You don't really have a lot of money with you, and you have to ask people if they can help you out. Not all of them are as kind as your parents would be or your brothers and sisters.
Evictions and losses, mentions for your bosses. Annington, get out! We know what you're all about, evictions.
In 2014, government statistics formally stated that 52,000 households in the UK are classified as homeless. From 2013 to 2014, a total of 280,000 families were given some form of government assistance because they were at risk of losing their home. It is estimated that there were 1,768 people sleeping rough in the UK in 2010. The number has drastically increased to 2,750 in 2014. This increase has a direct correlation with inflating house prices, social reforms and welfare cuts. What is your biggest concern on a day-to-day basis?
I would be to have a home, or have a place to stay, or find a place to put your head down, or to get a toilet. If you try to do a toilet on the street, it will cost you £500.
It's funny when you see the contrast of life, the juxtaposition. We got people out spending big £100, £200 on a bit of alcohol each night, and we got my man here who's looking for a little shackle to sleep his head, a little shack, a little room, and he's got some pee to spend, but you know, like, no one wants to help out a man.
I think overall economic policy has not changed drastically over the years to have a huge effect on my business. I think that one thing that has affected my business, which probably doesn't come under the term economic policy, is the employment laws. Some of those laws have been detrimental to the business people, especially in a labour-intensive business like civil engineering.
You have a job, but you don't know when you'll work or if you'll be paid. That's the reality for 1 million Brits employed on 0-hours contracts.
There are currently 1.86 million people unemployed in the UK, which is an all-time low. This should indicate social prosperity and economic growth. The number of people claiming job seekers allowance also fell to 700,000, which is the lowest level since the recession in 2008. The number of 0-hour contracts in the UK has risen sharply by 26%, from 1.4 million in 2013 to 1.8 million in 2014. This increase is a considerable factor in the low level of unemployment. 700,000 people are now relying on this unsecured employment as their sole source of income.
In recent months and years, we have started to see a growth of 0-hours contracts, particularly amongst public sector workers. No longer are these small groups of workers who are employed on temporary casual employment. Now, in some sectors, this type of abusive employment relationship is becoming the norm.
McDonald's, Sports Direct, Domino's and even Buckingham Palace are 0-hours employers.
In fact, if you go down to Warm Lane, you will see them all the way along the streets there looking for work, and they get picked up by people, builders and people like that, to give them a day's work to provide the food for their families. So we're always going to get a lot more of these food kitchens coming in. The houses that are being built is inadequate, although there's thousands being built in Brent in particular, and still it's not even denting the housing for the people who need them.
No matter what's on special offer in the grocery stores, eating well is still a luxury for increasing numbers of British families. Low wages and slashed welfare mean food banks, or even theft indeed, to keep their children fed. Polly Boyker's got the story of those beneath the breadline.
40 Anglican bishops and 600 senior clergy have recently written to MPs urging them to address the growing number of people relying on food banks in the UK. This is the biggest faith intervention on UK poverty in modern times. In 2010, 61,500 people were given an emergency 3-day food supply. The number has grown significantly to 913,000 in 2014.
Nutritional meals for your kids, you hear it all the time on the TV, how they should be eating the 5 a day, and fresh meats, but you know, sometimes you just literally can't do it.
Out of the latest figures, 330,000 are children. A study of 2,100 working families showed that 1 in 5 parents had to choose between paying essential bills and putting food on the table.
I go to churches, even though I'm Muslim, I go to the mosque, I pray, they give us food, free food. I go to churches, they give us free food. I go to food banks, they give us free food. So really just food and warmth.
Food and warmth?
Yeah, I do get benefits.
They are basic human needs, right?
I do get benefits every ending of the month, so it's okay.
In a recent vote, 71 MPs with linked to medical corporations opted for the privatisation of the NHS. As a result of this, Tory party donors have been handed £1.5 billion in NHS contracts. This indicates that financial transactions have been made in return for legislative favours. A clear-cut example of this occurred in 2009, when the Shadow Health Secretary, Andrew Lansley, was constructing a bill pertaining to the privatisation of NHS contracts. His office received a £21,000 donation from John Nash, the chairman of private healthcare company. It was later discovered that 96% of their business comes from the NHS, a staggering £400 million.
No, I've had enough of you! I've had enough of you and Cameron!
Well, I'm very sorry.
Are you going to go home?
Because the NHS is not for sale. There's no privatisation.
Oh, God, what have you been privatised since 1979? Don't you dare lie to me!
79? No.
You're not going! I'm not letting you go! No! I'm not letting you go! No!
I'll go the other way.
No, I've been waiting!
I'm well aware that £60,000 sounds a lot of money to anyone earning less than that, but the reality is that anyone from a professional or business background earns considerably more than that. And if you say to people, I'm sorry, for the whole of your parliamentary career, that is the maximum you will be able to earn, then you can do that, but you would simply be excluding very large numbers of very able people who have a lot to contribute to Parliament.
Right.
Because they could not, and their families would not allow them to accept such a substantial reduction in their standard of living.
Or what fee you had in
Oh,
mind?
of course.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it'd be good to, I don't know if you have a kind of daily rate in mind.
I mean, normally, if I'm doing a speech or something, it's £5,000 a day. That's what I charge.
That the HSBC corruption scandal explicitly involves the Tories getting money from it, and leader of our country, David Cameron, still wants to make nun puns in Parliament.
They've even offended Britain's nuns. No wonder people look at Labour and say they haven't got a prayer.
Peers named in the files include Lord Sterling and someone called Lord Fink, who gave $3 million to the Conservatives and used to be a party treasurer.
And one of the people named is the Labour donor Lord Paul, who funded Gordon Brown's election campaign.
How can you even use that as an argument? Like, look, I am a horrible bastard. No one's questioning that, not even me, not my wife. But they're bastards and all. Over 25 billion of tax goes uncollected each year because of situations like this.
At least 2 major global hedge fund managers are intimately connected to the organisers of tonight's ball. Both of them run major tax avoidance schemes offshore. When David Cameron famously says we're all in it together, well, you're not unless you're one of the 570 going into the ballroom.
The cause of the recession in 2008 is largely attributed to the irresponsible spending of bankers, taking large risk-reward bets that often did not pay off. Their insurance for these losses proved to be the taxpayer, and when banks such as RBS collapsed, they were kept afloat by government funding. In the years preceding the crash, £80 billion of cuts have been made to compensate for this bailout, yet £81 billion has since been paid in banker bonuses. So it is clear that the vulnerable members of society, whom rely heavily on social spending, are suffering for gambles they had no control over or stake in, whilst the wealthiest members are still enjoying substantial financial reward. This poses a complex question as to what takes priority in our society, banking efficiency or social security. The Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Osborne, has campaigned to prevent caps being put on banker bonuses, demonstrating the extent to which the wealthy are protected by those in power. Osborne has recently announced a £12 billion cut to welfare in the latest budget. This is accompanied by £5 billion that failed to materialise from tax avoidance measures, further demonstrating the trend.
To fund our NHS each and every year, to give a tax cut to working people, so that we make work pay, we support our public services, and we have an economic policy that supports our entire country.
You've just found an extra £8 billion. All I'm asking is, where does it come from? Well, no higher taxes, extra public spending cuts, where?
Well, it's part of our balanced plan.
The £8 billion on the NHS, you have said nothing like that. It's totally opaque.
Well, I'll come on to the inheritance tax plan, but we have got a balanced proposal.
So you're not going to give me an answer on the $8 billion, where it's coming from? You haven't given me an answer. With respect, you've said the economy is going to grow, everything is going to be fine. Somehow we'll find the money. I keep asking you very straight questions about where the money's coming from. You keep saying sensible and balanced, and sensible. That's not, with respect, exactly what I'm asking. I'm just asking where the money comes from.
I've just given you very specific numbers.
After thorough research, I have concluded that the cause of growing inequality in the UK is largely due to the influence wealthy individuals have on our government legislation. This influence takes precedent over public interest and is compromising our democracy, as the masses are lacking a voice in order to amplify the concerns of corporate interests. If a system is only benefiting a small percentage of our population, then it is redundant and needs refinement in order to be sustainable. In order to bridge the gap on the growing levels of inequality, power structures need to be reassessed for their value. The oligopoly of banks and corporations should be broken down in order to restore market fairness and the prospects for a just and more lateral society. This would actually stimulate economic growth, as many experts such as Hertzberg have stated, because motivation and job enrichment would dramatically increase, with everyone having a stake in a business. This theory contradicts the supply-side economics that was introduced during the Margaret Thatcher era in the 1980s. Politicians should be forced to abide by their agendas put forward in manifestos, as in the current system this is being used as a form of advertising to the public instead of a reliable legislative tool. This is the cause for younger generations becoming increasingly disillusioned with politics, which is unacceptable if we are to tackle inequality for the next generation. The Conservatives are currently looking to scrap the Human Rights Act. To give you an idea of what this is, I'm going to list some of the human rights. The right to life, freedom from torture and inhumane or degrading treatment, right to liberty and security, freedom from slavery and forced labour, no punishment without law, freedom of thought, belief and religion, freedom of expression, freedom of assembly and association, right to peaceful enjoyment of your property, right to education, right to participate in free elections.
What's your fondest memory?
Yes, fondest memory. I love that dog. I told him, listen, we can't do anything about it. It's gone.
And finally, what has brought you the most happiness in your life?
Definitely my children, but not without pain. But as they say, no pain, no gain. But definitely my children.
The most happiness that I've had was first getting married and having my two daughters.
These sorts of happiness is friends and family, really. Just interacting with them and having a good time, I think, is the best.
My younger brother brings joy to my life. When I remember him, I always pick myself up and I always make sure that I do the best things positive in my life.